Well, we're excited to be here. Please have a seat, have a little fun today. I'm here joined by our Congresswoman, Anna Paulina Luna. We also have Florida's Lieutenant Governor from across the bay in Tampa, Jay Collins. And we have Florida's Agriculture Commissioner from the county north of here in Pasco County, Wilton Simpson. And we have State Reps Cheney and Burfield. So I want to thank them for being here. So I don't think I'm breaking any news today when I say that the U.S. Congress has some serious problems with how it operates. The institution is broken. There's a lot of reasons for that. And, we look and see different things that we don't like about it, particularly on an individual basis, and that's great to discuss. But, this is part of a larger issue that has really caused our constitutional system to be eroded the way the Founding Fathers intended. When they created, and we're coming up, this is the year of America 250, 2026. Oh, we're doing so much stuff in Florida. I mean, I put George Washington in the state capitol building, just beautiful statue of Washington. I got Ben Franklin in Franklin County right by the courthouse. We dropped a Thomas Jefferson statue in Jefferson County. I can get these on discount because the liberal states are taking them down. So it's a buyer's market if you like the Founding Fathers. So we're doing... we have Hamilton and Hamilton County coming soon, Madison and Madison County coming soon, Monroe down in the Florida Keys and Monroe County coming soon. But then we're also going to do things to honor people that have really exemplified those founding ideals. And so I've got a Lincoln statue coming. We're going to do that. I have Calvin Coolidge we're going to do, one of my favorites. And we're on and on it goes. So we're doing all this stuff. So this is a great year to talk about what it means to be an American, how did this country get founded, what are the ideals and everything like that. But one of the things that the Founding Fathers, when they won the Revolution, they had all these state governments, and these legislatures were like ultra powerful, and they created a constitution, part of it to checks and balances, separation of powers. But they said even with that, legislatures are the most powerful in a Republican system of government. Why? Because you control the power of the purse. So you talk about there's fraud in Minnesota with the Somali. First of all, people have known about that for like a decade, because when I was in Congress, and I've recovered from that experience, but I was there, I remember the Minnesota Republicans talking about it then. In fact, I did a trip out there to do, because we were investigating domestic terrorism, and so this is like something that's been wrong. But here's the thing: anytime you see the government doing anything you don't want, the easiest remedy is to go to the Congress and have them simply take the funding away. Because if they don't have funding, then they can't do any of this stuff. So you don't like the abuse of IRS agents, defund. You don't like some of the other stuff that's done in some of the bureaucracy, defund. You have the ability to do that. And so Madison said that the power of the purse is the most effectual weapon that you can wield in Republican government. And, it doesn't even matter. We wouldn't even be talking about a permanent bureaucracy if Congress wielded the power of the purse. And so what's happened over the years is they have given away so much of their authority to the bureaucracy. They don't really legislate funding anymore. They just do continuing resolutions. That's just government on autopilot. You're not reforming anything if you're doing continuing resolution. You reform things by passing an actual bill that takes away funding from the bad things and then funds the good things. And so they've totally given up their number one weapon, which is the power of the purse. And then they've also delegated a lot of lawmaking authority to the bureaucrats. I remember when I was the people that would come to see me, they weren't talking about anything I was voting on. They're talking about these agencies issuing rules. Nobody knows who these bureaucrats are, and then the rules come down, and then they got to deal with it, and there's no accountability. But, a lot of these congressmen have recognized, make the agencies do things that's going to piss people off, right? Like they could just give it to there and then they get reelected, and that's kind of how it is. So there's been a lot of things that have led to this, but I think ultimately, you do have an institution that just doesn't do what the Founding Fathers envisioned. It's really distorted government, particularly on the spending side, particularly with having, a big administrative state. And there's a lot of things that have gone in it. So, I've been a big supporter in a lot of different reforms. I'm leading the effort around the country for the states to certify a constitutional amendment for term limits for members of Congress. We've got 12. Florida's one. We've got 12. We're probably going to get a half a dozen others this year. And I'll tell you, once people see that this is possible, it's going to get momentum. I think people want term limits, but they say, well, Congress will never do it. Well, you don't really need Congress to do it if the states do it, and we have that mechanism to do as well. So as that gets momentum, I think people are going to be really excited that that's the part of it. But part of the reason I believe in term limits is because I think Congress doesn't use its authority because the path of least resistance to getting reelected is just kind of autopilot, right? If you actually have some of these fights, people could get upset about it, and maybe you don't get reelected. I'd rather do the right thing than worrying about that, but that's just not how most people think. So I do think that would be something you go, have a limited period of time, get things done, and then leave a legacy. And I think it works better in our legislature, quite frankly, to have it. People will point out, oh, it's not perfect. Of course it's not. It's better than what we have now, right? That's it, and I think it would help. So that's been something of it. The other thing I'm helping to do around the country is requiring that Congress balance the budget, just like the state of Florida has to balance the budget. We have surpluses, so it's not as big a deal for us. Pretty easy. In fact, when I became governor, our rainy day fund, so we've almost quadrupled the rainy day fund just since I've been governor in 7-year period. We've paid down, if you look at Florida, 180 years plus as a state, all the debt that has been accumulated, we've paid off half of it just in my tenure as governor. So don't tell me this stuff can't be done. It can be done. We've eliminated taxes at the state level. I don't have any more taxes to cut at the state level. That's why I'm trying to do the property tax for local to help you guys out with that. In 2019, my first local governments in Florida brought in $32 billion in revenue from property tax. Today, they're bringing in over $56 billion. Now, look, we've had population growth, we've had inflation. I'm not saying that it wouldn't go up more than 32 just naturally with all those things, but it wouldn't go to 56. And so the question is, how is that money being used? And would you rather have that return to you as a homeowner rather than continuing to feel the growth? Because the reality is, whether you like or not, you cannot have 6 or 7 years where you're almost doubling the amount of revenue that's going in. That is not going to ultimately work in the long term. So we are working on that. But a balanced budget requirement, we have 28 states. We need 34 to trigger it. So we've got 28. We think we're going to get a few more this year and to be able to do that. So I've been a big supporter of that as well. I also work with our legislature to certify another amendment that I think would be really good. We don't have as much support nationally just because I think people don't know what's out there. But we've proposed a 28th amendment that would simply say this: Congress shall make no law respecting the citizens of the United States that does not also apply to members of Congress themselves. I mean, wouldn't that be a good one to do? So, which brings me to the subject today, because I think what Congresswoman Luna in Washington is really leading the effort there, and we're limited on how we can affect this particular issue, but we are going to affect it, and we're going to propose something, we're going to do it. But, you notice this thing, and it's really odd. You'll have people get elected to Congress having never shown any investment acumen ever in their life, and then all of a sudden they become Warren Buffett on steroids. They're putting some of the biggest hedge funds in America to shame with these stock trades that have these real suspicious timing. Because, look, if you buy a stock and it goes up 400% like in like a month, that's like a once-in-a-lifetime investment. And yet these guys seem to be doing this quite frequently. And they have access to certain information, I believe, that is helping to fuel that. So if you look at Nancy Pelosi's portfolio, she has absolutely shattered a lot of these investment records. But it's not just that. There's a whole bunch, and it's on both sides of the aisle. So what Anna Paulina Luna has done is said, we got to stop the insider trade. It's basically a different form of insider trading. Like there's certain insider trading on Wall Street, and that does apply to Congress, but they're privy to different types of that's not really contemplated under existing laws. So what it should, and what I did, so, I was there for 3 terms. The day I got in, I stopped doing stocks. So I've never done a stock trade since I've been in elected office, and my reason was, why would I want to be in a situation where, like, I take some action and then someday someone will say, oh, well, that's because, you own Microsoft or you own this or that. I was like, no. So it's like 401k, all that stuff. And that's not, but this, I'm going to buy here, sell here. When you're in office, I think it's bad. So that was the decision I made. I'm poorer for it, but you know what? You only live once, and I'd rather do what's right and let the chips fall where they may. Other people make different decisions, and you see really dramatic shifts. And I think Pelosi's worth hundreds of millions of dollars now, having been in Congress for 40 years or what. Oh, by the way, term limits would have solved that problem too. So just be honest. So you have that. So her bill really fixes this problem. And here's the thing. I think it hurts Congress. I think it's short-sighted to allow this because people already have a low estimation, and then they see this stuff, and then they're like, oh, yeah, you're on this committee, there's this issue, you do this stock, and then it goes up 200% the next week, or you dump this stock and it tanks, the next 2 weeks later. Those when you invest, that's just not typical. Because honestly, I would think that our state pension fund, we have one of the biggest pension funds. Pelosi, if she leaves Congress, I told our head Chris Spencer, maybe get her to run the pension fund. I'd love those returns for Florida. You guys would, anyone who's in the pension, you do really well. So that's the thing. So she's pushing on that. I think it's a no-brainer. I think every single member of Florida's congressional delegation should be supporting Congresswoman Luna's bill to end this charade with this insider congressional stock trading. And it's the right thing to do. Now, from the state level, we're active. It's like, okay, well, maybe we can just do it for our federal representatives. The reality is there's a lot of Supreme Court precedent that would not let us do that. It really has to be done federally, because I would have been supportive of just saying you're a congressperson or a senator from Florida and then you do. And it's not the same as the state legislator, because our state legislatures, they're part-time. Some of them are investment. They have investment businesses, and they're not privy to the same type of information. So it's not at all the same what goes on in at least Florida state legislature compared to what goes on in Washington with respect to stock trading. But so it's like, how can we do it? So what we're going to propose, I have some members of the legislature that I think thought of this. I don't think I thought of it. And so hopefully they'll do it. But what we're going to do, and then we are allowed to do this, is when they qualify for federal office, there's going to be a checkbox. Do you intend to trade individual stocks while you're in Congress? Yes or no? And so you as a voter will know what they said. And if they say no, well, when they run for re-election, they have to answer a second question. Did you, in fact, trade any stocks individually while you were in Congress? And if they say yes, then that means they broke their word to you and honestly lied on those forms. And so that's what we're going to do. It's within our power to do that. We wouldn't be able to do anything more than that without running afoul of major Supreme Court precedent. Because, the Florida voters actually voted for term limits for Congress in the early 90s. There was a big push to term limit Congress state by state. So our congressmen would have been term limited. Our U.S. senators would have been term limited. U.S. Supreme Court, in a case called Thornton, 5-4, said that was not allowed. Now, the dissent was written by Justice Clarence Thomas. And usually Thomas is right, and he was right on this one too. But the reality is that is where we are. So I don't think it would end up being something that we would be able to sustain right now. So hopefully they get momentum this year to finally get this done. I know she's going to talk about that. And if they do, then to me, I think it solves the problems. But in the meantime, what we're doing here in Florida, that's going to help you as a voter to be able to ferret out. And my thing is like you get there, you should be able, you want to get there to do something good for people, not get there to be something and to be able to kind of capitalize off the swamp up there. So this is a good reform. I think it's very thoughtful. It's got my support. But, man, we should at least have all the Florida federal representatives lining up behind this. Look, California, some of these, I don't know how they think it. The water's different there. I mean, it's just really ridiculous. You know, I always get a chuckle. I'll meet people, I wish you got to come to run for governor of California. I was like, I couldn't get elected. Are you kidding me? Like, it's a different mindset in terms of what goes on. But here, I have no doubt that this reform is what the voters of this state would like to see. And to tell you more about it, I'm going to welcome up the Congresswoman herself.
First of all, I just want to make it known that I fully support the governor's efforts in doing what he's doing, specifically for leading the charge on this at the state level, because, as he pointed out, Nancy Pelosi's stock portfolio, 17,000% returns, outperforming Warren Buffett. On average, members that do engage in stock trading on both sides are getting 600% returns and outperforming the S&P. So how could you ever expect members of Congress to truly work for the American people if this is indeed what they're doing? And it's wrong, and it needs to stop. And so I'm very happy that Governor DeSantis has been able to lead on this effort. I hope other governors follow in suit, and I do think that he's owed a round of applause for this, because this is something that is politically dicey, but a good thing to do. As far as our bill goes, it is the most bipartisan bill currently in Congress. We have people that you would never expect, probably people that you don't politically align with, that are actually supporting these efforts because they know it's bad and it needs to end. And I'm happy to report, Governor, that we actually have met with the Speaker of the House and that we are going to be putting something on the floor coming up this quarter that will permanently stop the insider trading, which it is happening in Washington, D.C., but it's permanently going to stop it in D.C. So happy to report back on that. And frankly, I hope that some of my colleagues that are engaged in the process will have governors that will hold them accountable. So thank you so much for being here. We appreciate everything that you're doing. And again, a round of applause for Governor DeSantis. Thank
you. Well, that's encouraging to hear that we may get a vote on this. I think it's really good. Do you guys, I got Wilton, Jay, do you guys want to say anything? Come on up.
Well, good morning. Always great to be here, and Happy New Year to each of you. Rep. Luna, thank you for your leadership on this subject. Incredible. It's amazing to see you lead and push and hold people accountable there. You're a true fighter for your people. And, of course, we have Governor Ron DeSantis, who is, as always, the GOAT, a juggernaut, standing up for individual freedoms and rights and holding people accountable. You know, it's important when we talk about this, and the governor did an extraordinary job of laying this out. It's about fairness, and it's about trust in the people you elect and go to office. You heard the Congresswoman talk about the percentages, the return on investments. I don't know about you, but my 401k is not giving me those same returns on investment. And in the end, you have to have faith that who you elect is serving those right interests. Rep. Luna, thank you. Thank you for common sense leadership on this subject up in D.C. I'm excited to hear all the great things. And Governor DeSantis, again, an incredible, nuanced, simple, straightforward approach to hold people accountable. A checkbox saying yes, no, I'm going to trade or I'm not going to trade. That's a simple way to hold people accountable and give power back to our people to say, look, you said this, you did that. Where's the accountability? As always, it's great to serve in the great state of Florida, 23.5 million people, and we lead on freedom, truth, and transparency. And Governor DeSantis, thank you. I appreciate it as always to speak.
Thanks a lot. So this is, look, honestly, this is bipartisan. It's not a partisan issue. I know Republicans always talk about Pelosi, and I do too a lot. Because honestly, it's a good example to use for a variety of things, not just that. Reading the bills before you pass them. Who would have thought that would be some? So that's fine. But let's just understand, this is a bipartisan ailment. This is not just Democrats. And I think it's important that as Republican, you're willing to stand up and say, you know what, we need to clean both houses up there. We've got problems on both sides of the aisle. Same with term limits. You know, people, there's not a single issue that spans partisan gender, race, anything cleavages, then everyone wants it, right? It doesn't matter you're Republican, Democrat, Independent. And because people realize there's a problem on both sides of the aisle with the incentives that have been created. So, and the thing is I think when you do reform like what the Congresswoman wants, what happens is, like, most people that get elected actually want to do the right thing. I think that there is some idealism, but man, you get up there, it's like a meat grinder. And they just beat that idealism out of you, and it just like, you know, and so you're just left. And so I think, and people follow the incentives. And it's like, well, I'll go along to get along. And I think some of the stuff with the stock stuff is like people are doing it. And so that's kind of here. I don't know that even people are intending to go to Congress for that. But I think once you get up there, I guess it's like, you know, you catch Potomac fever or something. It's just people change, right? That was the one thing I used to appreciate when I wasn't there long enough. But like I come back and like people would say, you didn't change. Thank you for not changing. Like the same person, you go in, you come out. And that's important for that. But I think this is really good, and it'll be there. And then the other thing I'll just say on a different subject is we are looking very seriously at, and not necessarily as me, I mean, I'll be supportive, but it's through the Attorney General's office that is able to bring these things, to be able to bring potentially a state case against Nicolas Maduro. You know, he was obviously very involved with drugs. He was obviously very involved with bringing drugs, particularly to Florida and across the. But you know what he would also do, and this is not in the federal indictment in New York, he would empty his prisons and send them to America across the border. And we'd end up with some of these people in Florida, Tren de Aragua gang members that were in prison there, and he did that. And so, to me, that is a very hostile act. So we're looking at the statutes to see. Obviously, we've got robust narcotic statutes, but certainly on that importing the criminal element. Because, you know, it's funny. I mean, remember a few years ago, we helped with transportation to Martha's Vineyard, very nice place. And, you know, you had a plane load of people that were in the country illegally. And it turned out, so this is, I think, probably like, you know, the fall of 22. So I was running for re-election. And most of them were Venezuelans. And the media was saying, oh, how dumb the governor, all the Venezuelans, Americans in Miami, they're going to hate it, all this stuff. Why is he doing it? And so, you know, and I didn't think it was right, but you never know, right? So I'm down in Doral like the next week, and these guys are high-fiving me. They're because they said Maduro is sending people to the border who should not be in this country. And so they knew better than anyone what was going on. So the narcotics, the gang, but also the immigration and what was done to do that, to put people at risk. And we've had people in Florida that have been victimized by Tren de Aragua gang members. And many of those people likely would never have even been able to come here, even with Biden's open border, had Maduro not been releasing people from prison. So we're going to look very seriously at that. Okay, back there, anybody?
Governor, when it comes to Venezuela, since you were talking about it, yesterday you said that you wanted the people to liberate themselves. How does that look? And if you were in the White House today, would you have done what President Trump ordered the action in Venezuela? Would you have done that?
If ifs and buts were candy and nuts, every day would be Christmas, my man. I mean, that's just the nature of it. No, look. You go back, I mean, this has been an issue in this state that I've been very vocal on for 15 years. I mean, actually, Chavez came to power probably sometime in like 2006 or 7 in that time period. And what did Chavez and Maduro do? They totally tanked the country. They tanked the economy. They repressed people. They took what should be the most prosperous country in South America and turned it into a place where people have to eat trash to be able to survive. And so I've always viewed Maduro as somebody that was illegitimate. And clearly this most recent election, I mean, was an illegitimate election in 2024 down in Venezuela. So bringing him to justice is absolutely appropriate. The larger context is this. During Biden's presidency, what we saw was increasing hostility throughout the Western Hemisphere to the United States of America with the installation of a lot of Marxist regimes. In fact, there were more Marxist regimes at the height of Biden's presidency than there were at the height of the Cold War. Because obviously, Brazil was taken over. You got Venezuela. Colombia had to take over. Cuba, which is orchestrating a lot of this. And you have some really, really rogue regimes. Honestly, with Trudeau, I counted Canada as a Marxist regime at that time, too. And not that it's a little better, but that, he was a piece of work. So, you just had that. Mexico has been a total narco state. So now, Malay gets in. We got a new president in Chile coming in. Hopefully Venezuela can turn, because they have massive resources. They have gold, they have oil, they have things. They could be an extraordinarily prosperous, free country. But they've got to choose that. And, it's interesting. I had remember Juan Guaido back in, this was during Trump's first term. His wife we brought her to Tallahassee. We thought that was something that was imminent. And it kind of just was a stalemate for a long time. And so now they have an opportunity to be able to choose a better path. I don't think that can be imposed, by the United States. But I think Maduro really was repressing kind of the positive energy there. And so now they have a pathway to maybe get their country on a better course. But they could be very, very successful. There's no question about it. But it just shows you, I'm watching this guy in New York City. And he talks about the frigidity of rugged individualism, that they're going to choose the warmth of collectivism. And I'm just thinking about myself, the 100 million dead bodies because of collectivism, those are cold, dead bodies. It's not warmth. Why do you have to build walls to keep people in collectivist societies? Why do you have to resort to coercion and force in collectivist societies? Cuba. Are people emigrating to Cuba? No, they try to leave Cuba. Are people emigrating to Venezuela? They've had millions and millions of people flee the country. And so this is just a textbook example of the failure of leftist and Marxist ideology put into place. So now you have New York City, and they're going to try to repeat kind of a similar song. Now, he's limited because he's a mayor. He's not a head of state. He thinks he's a head of state, but he's not. And so they're limited. But, it's funny. You have all this lofty rhetoric, say everything's going to be free, and then they just raise the subway fares. I was like, it doesn't work. None of this stuff will ever work. And so it was sad that they went down that road. And hopefully there's enough people that go back there to really prop up a better way forward. I think that's a question for her. I mean, look, I think crypto, honestly, there are some things because they have committees that deal with this. So would that be implicated?
I think in general, I think in general, as far as updating our legislation for transparency, as far as elections, all of that, financials, it needs to be updated as a whole because crypto is still even though it's been around for a little bit, it's still a very new thing in Congress. So yes, I would be in favor of preventing that because you want people that will serve in the invested interests of the people, not making a lot of money. You're supposed to go to Congress to serve, not to become a multimillionaire. And unfortunately, you see that happen all too often.
Now, the Bitcoin, that's one thing. I mean, I remember 2010 when it first came out. Because I was doing trading then. I mean, I didn't have a lot of money, but I was, pretty good at it. And I remember reading an article about this, and I was like, yeah. But you could have, if you just would have put down like $1,000 on Bitcoin then and just held it, that would have been a trade that would have, but that was a risk that people took at the time based on what was happening. So that's been volatile. Government policy does impact that. There's discussions that happen in Congress, so that'll be a part of it, and I think that's appropriate. Well, let him go one, and then I'll. It's interesting. That was not on my radar that bill had passed. What he pointed out, they're trying to obstruct the immigration. That is true. I mean, they tried to obstruct and it was demagogic. They were not being honest about what was going on. And notice everything everyone was saying was going to happen. Oh, you can't do this, there. I mean, there's an airport there that they built this stuff on. They were trying to act like the sky was going to fall, and that was wrong. And so what they did was wrong. And it was very disappointing to see them do that. Now, what is this project? Again, the congresswoman would know better than me, but I do think when the president pointed that out, what he said about their conduct was accurate.
What about the executive branch when it comes to banning stock trading?
I'm not. You'll have to ask her about what the contours of the bill are. That's something that I'm supportive of, but I also think that if we can deal with the Congress. And if that's something that could get across the finish line, I think that would be a really, really big win. And I think that that's something you could pocket. There's huge differences. I mean, to serve in the executive branch, there's massive bureaucracy you got to go through. There are massive disclosures. I don't know that it would be the same to say, like, a cabinet secretary versus a member. The members of Congress, I think the rules are just different. I think they are very much more liberal than what you have for that. So, all right. So I'm going to do. We got some good announcements this week. So this is a good one. I'm looking forward to this vote up there. I would hope to see every member of Congress in Florida voting with Anna Paulina Luna on this in favor of it. And, it is an election year, so maybe voters will take notice if some don't. And you never know how these districts are going to shake up, right? I mean, that's all up in the air, and there's a lot of uncertainty there. So and then we got big announcement tomorrow, so stay tuned. And then another, I think, actually, we're going to punt the Thursday to Monday. So we've got a couple major things coming down the pike, and we're going to start off 2026 with a bang. So God bless everybody. Thank you.